Hi, folks. My name is Ori Keren. I'm the co-founder and CEO of Linear B. And I'm excited to welcome Patrick Jean, the CTO of OutSystems, to the Interact stage.
Thanks, and please call me PJ.
Great, PJ. So I'm really looking forward for this conversation. We're going to talk today about technical depth, low code, and how they play together in the developer productivity domain. You guys at OutSystems have an incredible run. You raised last year, correct me if I'm wrong, by a $9.5 billion valuation. So I don't know what kind of extra confirmation you can get to the market size you're in and to the great product you built. So congrats. You're on a big mission to change the way software is being built and how to minimize technical debt. So maybe let's jump to the first question that will kind of like set the ground for our audience. We all, I was a VP of engineering at my past. We all had to deal with technical debt. Maybe, as a first question, I want to hear from you a little bit about how do you see, what's technical debt even to you? How do you define it? And what's the impact it does on engineering teams?
Yeah, for sure. And first, thanks. Yeah, definitely, it's been a good ride as far as in the industry and OutSystems specifically. It talks to the need as far as what we have. And so, to your point on the question of technical debt, we have a problem. I mean, in software development. I mean, you've been doing it for years. I've been doing it for years. It's something that it's kind of like this best of times, worst of times, if you want to think of it. So we have this amazing technology. We have, it's like you've never had access as a developer to more technology, cloud computing, all the different tools and frameworks and languages that's out there. It's just an amazing time. But then all of that comes with complexity. And so technical debt historically or kind of classically is been defined as the decisions that you make now that you're going to have to do work in the future, generally under time pressure to get software out. And so it's conscious decisions. I know I have to not do this thing that I want to do, but I have time pressure to release it. I kind of like to broaden that as far as definition of it. And so if you think of technology as something that should be an enabler, when you think of that term technical debt, it now becomes the enemy of innovation. So instead of technology being an enabler, it's something that you have to keep paying into, which is odd, right? It sounds weird. This thing that you're supposed to be using to benefit you, now all of a sudden you're shackled by it. It's an anchor. And that's what's happening. And so with the complexity that we've added to the software development process, it's creating more and more technical debt. Let me kind of break down into these two phases what I like to think of from a technical debt and a complexity standpoint. The very first, and this is traditional development, very first as far as thing that you have to get into is putting together a team of very qualified individuals to create software. I mean, that's hard. And so you think of cloud native, internet scale, you need software engineers. Well, what type of software engineer? Well, you need a back end, need a front end, need a full stack, just all sorts of different specializations that's come up as far as within software development. What framework do I use? What language do I use? Do you let each team decide their own languages? It just gets significantly complex. Well, what about application architects? What about SREs? What about cloud engineers? What about security engineers? It just kind of goes on and on. So you have to go build this team, to put applications together. They have to make decisions. There's a cognitive load just in the design itself. In that process, you create technical debt. You know that there are things you'd want to do. Maybe you don't quite have the skills. Maybe the services or stack doesn't quite fit your needs, and you're making decisions there and to offload, to push off into the future things that you want. Now when you finally do, as far as get the application into production, hopefully as soon as possible, think of it with the traditional development stack, then you immediately go into, now I have to maintain the thing. So where innovation was 100% of your effort, up to that point, even though you had this complexity to deal with, now you start being burdened with the maintenance aspect. So once again, technical debt, I have technology that I have to keep maintaining. Bugs will appear as well. Security flaws will appear. APIs will become deprecated. Then you have to go in and do it. And so if you kind of broaden the scope of technical debt, decisions I've made as a developer to not do something, I have to do it in the future. That's technical debt. Things that just come at me that I really can't, I can't do anything about. Those also come at me too. And so there's just massive amount of effort that gets built up. I'm sure you've read the report or is that we put out 40%, as far as of development time and enterprises are now spent on just maintaining, from a technical debt standpoint. And so it's just too much and it's broken and we have to fix it. And so that is the mission that we're on as far as at OutSystems to fix that problem.
Yeah, it's super interesting because what really caught me listening to what you said is like, I never thought about it like that. You're saying, so you're building something, you're building a product. Technical debt even starts when you start hiring. I never thought about it like that. When you start hiring and you need people like with certain skills, and the fact that every decision that you take, it's ramping up. I've never thought about it as early as that. That's cool. And you also talked about how the two are like kind of like enemies, innovation and technical debt. That's really interesting. I know you guys at OutSystems, you had like a super interesting report that kind of estimated the cost of technical debt in the next 10 years. And you got to these amazing amounts of $5 trillion in the next 10 years are going to be spent around technical debt. If I remember correctly, there were kind of like 4 areas that you can maybe take upon yourself to combat this. Can you elaborate on this a little bit?
Yeah, I mean, and it was really as far as in the survey and getting information from people as far as the areas that they saw, right, that were challenges. I mean, one I mentioned a little bit, just the choice of languages and frameworks. And like I said, you've been doing engineering for a while. What framework do you use? You could just start out with, first you choose your language, then there's a framework generally that you're going to adhere to. Different frameworks, UI on the front end, could be on the back end, .NET, they have their own set of frameworks. Other development languages have their own set of frameworks. That aspect right there of choosing that, you choose it, then you get into it. And, I don't want to say you're stuck with it, quote unquote, because that's kind of like a completely negative connotation, but you are stuck with it. You're not going to go in and rip out that framework. It was really just a model, a paradigm of taking the language or what your development tool set is and building that application. So that's the number one thing. And if you really think about, and so the approach we're taking as far as at OutSystems is, you don't have to go in there and make all these decisions, because in the long run, they're very temporal, and so today this framework may be the hottest thing, next year it's not. And so then that's the immediate choice that generates technical debt is I've chosen it. Now I'm kind of indebted, quote unquote, to it, as far as that framework, that language. I'm not going to rip that thing out. It's almost like changing your DNA. Well, what if you didn't have to, right? And so kind of a perfect development. If you think of perfect development, software development, I know what the application wants. That's an assumption. A lot of times we don't, but let's just say we know what the application needs to be, what the users want. I say the application, what the users want. Well, then if I could just describe that and the application would manifest itself, that would be kind of pure software development. That would be like the perfect, right, as far as world. Well, number one, you don't. You have these frameworks that you have to go in and choose. You have the languages. The other is developer turnover. So a little bit like I mentioned before. So you getting all these great developers in the world, which there are way too few of, right? About 25 million developers in the world today. I think there's roughly 6-7 billion as far as people that have, as far as smart devices that would have an application. There's a huge disparity there. Yeah. So it's very constrained as far as skill set of people with that skills that's needed. So that's another big aspect of it. Mentioned meeting deadlines, making decisions along there. And so that's the classic. A lot of people think of tech debt in that way. I have a deadline. There's something I really want to do. I can't do it. I'm going to have to get that, application out. And so you make that choice as far as of meeting that deadline. And then kind of like the fourth big area that we have a lot of our customers in the industry in general, it's just the needs that evolve over time. And a lot of times what will happen is you'll make a choice with an assumption of needs. So maybe you think the application needs to do a certain thing. You invest in a certain area, and maybe that's not needed anymore, or the need wasn't understood, and you really didn't architect it in a way that you would have done if you understood the need further. And that's going to happen. We know in software development that's agile. You have to get it. You only really know whether the application is useful or beneficial if it's in the user's hands. And so you want to get it in the user's hands as quickly as possible. And then either the need evolves or your understanding evolves to be better. And both of those generally happen. So all four of those things really add a significant amount, from a technical debt standpoint. Those are really sources of a significant amount of work. And once again, work that goes into where you're not really driving innovation, you're just maintaining the status quo, and so that where technology, instead of being your friend as an enabler, now you're indebted to it because of these factors.
Yeah, we're going to talk about a lot about more about like why it's happening like that further on. But maybe before we get there, like you said, like you understand the needs, or at least we hope we understand the needs of like our users and our customers, and things evolve. It always happens that you kind of identifying the area that you need to refactor. Now, I've been struggling with that, and I'm trying to guide. I've been trying to guide my teams and the people I worked with, how do we identify it's the right moment to take now time and change, maybe even replace like some of the tech stack, like you said, or some other elements. Do you have any tips on, what's the tipping point to kind of understand, okay, now we got to get in and refactor it. What is it after we solve like 2 bugs in this area? Like, how do you identify it's time? Let's take this component and rebuild it somehow.
Yeah, I mean, look, the best answer is all the time, and it's from immediate,
Yeah.
now, as we know, it's not just software development's not just a homogeneous, continuous flow of activities. I mean, there are kind of bursts of activities. There are decisions. You have a runway that's in front of you as a developer. You can go do things, then you have to come in and make more decisions. I think from a refactoring standpoint, classically, it's generally, once you're over a new functionality or a release, it's always a great time to go in and really start looking at from a refactoring standpoint. But I'll challenge, I'll kind of challenge the wisdom, the normal wisdom here is that why do you even need to refactor? We shouldn't create the necessity to refactor. And that's the problem. And that's one of the things that we're working on solving is this whole technology stack that realistically is undifferentiated heavy lifting, and which creates this need to refactor is one of the problems that we have in software development. So what I see as far as really going forward and the way out of some of these problems is just removing that need that we're creating. And refactoring is just one of the manifestations of kind of a symptom, of a negative along that path. And so what if you really didn't need to do refactoring in the normal sense? And so that's one of the things that we're working on, where the application development platform itself, which takes a lot of that underlying as far as technology stack decisions that developers have to make today in traditional development, and we handle that for them, And so the answer, refactor, I think you should do it all the time from a traditional development standpoint. The best answer is let the platform do it for you. If you're in traditional development, I'd say that your optimal times as far as from efficiency standpoint, generally right after release. You put out a release, immediately go in, start investing, in refactoring, which once again, that refactoring, if you take the classical definition, you're not changing the surface area or the contract or the functionality. You're simply going in and restructuring code. There's no end user benefit to refactoring in general. Sometimes you could say there's a performance benefit, but it's a form of technical debt where I'm having to pay down these decisions that I made or that were forced upon me. And you shouldn't have to do it. We need to fix it, and that's where I think the low code, no code space is really, really helping along this area.
Yeah, it's super interesting. Like one of the metrics we have in Linear-B, we kind of measure the amount of rework. Basically, it's refactoring code that is young. Like you released it and you're refactoring right away, and you're saying, hey, right after release or continuously refactor them.
When you you kind of go back to the point of software development is broken. I mean, it's software is great, software development is great, and it's broken. At the same time, because great technology, but then the complexity is too much. I mean, we see it across the board as far as an enterprise is taking up, low code, no code. We'll see, classic. One of the places would be maybe companies that haven't yet invested so much as far as in traditional development. Now they see this wave of low code, no code coming in, and then they can jump on that without the significant investment of traditional devs that some companies have, and then they actually get a little of a leap ahead. So they're kind of leapfrogging that investment that others have made in traditional development. They don't have to do all that heavy lifting, undifferentiated lifting, go straight into it. You'll see financial, you'll see as far as health, medical. I mean, a lot of the industries that maybe have lagged a little bit now all of a sudden see this opportunity, because one of the things that happens with low code, no code too, for providers that like us that really focus on the serious apps, there's a significant amount of the security and compliance, availability, performance that gets handled by the platform. So, we kind of didn't even talk about that aspect of it from a development standpoint, because you're so focused on functionality, but all of the NFRs, all of the ilities, have to be taken into account for, and generally highly compliant as far as industries. They've been laggards, in the custom software development as far as space, and so we see them even more so jumping on that. Healthcare, once again, financial, small businesses can jump into this really well. And then you'll see also as far as movement of traditional developers into this low code space, which we're going to touch on why I don't like that term low code, and that's exactly it, because there is a friction. I mean, there's a challenge in the term itself. Whereas you've been a developer, I've been a developer. When you come in and say, "Hey, look, go to this low code thing," it's like, well, low. I mean, low kind of sounds bad to me, right? It's like, wait a minute, what's going on here? Why do you want me to go to a lower thing? And it's like, it's not really lower. I mean, it's lower in the sense of it's lowering all of this undifferentiated heavy lifting, is what I like to think of it. And I think we need a better term. And as engineers, we always like to have terms that are this huge, right? This big, huge, complex thing that no one can kind of understand outside of a small group. I think at least low code, no code has created a moniker for the industry that people can now understand what that represents to a degree. It has a negative connotation though for developers, and it has caused unnecessary friction, because if you kind of a little bit of going back, you say, hey, who picks it up? How do they do it? Think about a back-end developer. I mean, this is where I came from, more of the back end. I'm not a front-end developer. I mean,
Me too.
always, as far as I would look at what some of these people have done, and I'm amazed. I'm like, wow, I wish I was that creative on the front-end side, but I never was. But, our tool, you think of like an individual getting into low code. When we talk about technical debt, it affects organizations from an investment standpoint, but it also affects an individual and just my satisfaction as a developer. I mean, how much time did you want to spend on technical debt when you were a developer? I mean, I've never heard a developer raise their hand and say, "Hey, please give me some more technical debt to work on." It's just it is a dissatisfaction area as a developer. I want to write beautiful applications that my users love, enjoy, and give me feedback on, and I can continue on. I mean, you just don't want to spend time in servicing technical debt.
Yeah. As you were talking, I was kind of thinking about myself, and we both were developers. I'm thinking, do you see a pattern in, because I was thinking to myself, when I was a junior developer, I would probably say, hey, like, I want to do everything on my own. But then, as you mature as a developer, you kind of understand, hey, like, the best solutions is you write less code, you use more things that you count on them. Do you see that pattern? Do you see like the relation to like the maturity of the developer, or like I'm not a big believer in maturity models, but as a general thing, like a more senior developers kind of like embracing it now?
Yeah, it's interesting, right? As a junior developer, we always want to just get hands on keyboard, right?
Yeah.
It's like, why are you stopping me from writing code? I just want to write code. And then as you matured, there was more time thinking than there was a lot of times actually hands on keyboard writing code. And you realize that that thinking was so beneficial in a traditional development standpoint of I could actually spend less time writing code and have much more as far as functionality and capability in the user's hands, and so but the so that is a maturation along a traditional development path, and we've all been there, which kind of gets to the point when then you become a software architect. Some people move along that line, and then it's almost all thinking. It's that, okay, how do I help developers do the right thing? But inherent in that process, once again, are these paradigms, these abstractions. And so as a mature developer, I'm thinking more instead of writing more lines of code. Well, why do I do that? Because I have to understand the architecture, I have to understand the technology choices. So you're absolutely right. From a traditional development standpoint, I think it's absolutely better that you're spending more time. But once again, what if you didn't have to do that? What if you didn't have to think through all these abstractions of these technology layers, all these models as far as that you have to, your database model, what type of data as far as service are you going to use? How are you going to do asynchronous? How are you going to, pull together what type of how do you do authentication between services? What's your communication mechanisms? I mean, noisy neighbors, all those types of things. As a good developer, you begin to think more about, and so you're writing less code. But that's traditional development. What if you didn't have to think about all those things? What if you didn't have to worry about patching your infrastructure for security flaws? What if you didn't have to worry about noisy neighbor issues as far as from an availability standpoint? What if you didn't have to worry about all these things? So it kind of is, it's interesting. You flip the story on its head, whereas a developer, traditional developer, as a junior developer, like you said, I just want to write code. I just want to go on a keyboard and start punching out some code.
Yeah.
Well, what if you could just do that? I mean, and that's what, once again, we're trying to solve with OutSystems in this space is what if you could just immediately begin developing the creative aspect of development and start working on that and getting feedback almost immediately, which you kind of start breaking down the how as far as in the low code space. And that's one of the approaches we've taken is to embed that change. We call it true change. So true change engine. We actually capture change at the point of change in the development process, and so it does take that aspect of, well, hey, just go in there and start developing your application with a low code tool. So it's almost like you flip it on its head where what's an immature traditional developer now becomes a strength in a low code developer is I absolutely can just start getting hands on keyboard and start quote unquote writing code, even though it's low code, as I think you and I both don't like that term.
Yeah, we need to come up with a new name. Maybe we'll come up with a new name from this session.
It's gotta be. I have a suggestion, but it's once again, it's an engineering type suggestion, application development platform, which is called, you'll hear it, but it's a mouthful, and it's low code is so easy to roll off the tongue, right?
Yeah.
So we got to have somebody a lot more creative. We need marketing type people to come up with a better
Best
name.
code or something like
yeah, something like that.
So I know a lot of your customers have these challenges, but even you internally, if I understand correctly, you have teams that are some of the teams are legacy, or what we call the legacy software development, and some of them are using low code or best code, as we want to call it.
See, there you go. Now you should be in marketing because you've already termed legacy. That sounds bad.
yeah, legacy, and now you have best code or next gen code or
best
something
code,
like that.
I like it. Yeah, we do, and so one of the things we've done with our stack is we created the base of the stack as far as with legacy developers, and we still do today. And then we have as many teams as possible that are low code teams using our own software. And so we built a significant amount of our stack. So our entire OutSystems UI is built with OutSystems as a platform. We only really have about 6 base as far as UI components that are, legacy code component. And then we built on top of that with the platform. And so when you go install Service Studio, which is our IDE, you get a significant amount of packages that are low code or best code packages that come down, and we continue to do that. And I think that, it's interesting. We see the efficiency and effectiveness of these low code teams just significantly outstrip traditional development teams, and which obviously we see in our customer base, which is one of the benefits of this. But we see it firsthand. We'll have basically where you may have 5, 6, 7 developers on a team. A lot of times we can only have a couple of developers, low code developers. We need to constrain that because they put out so much, to kind of keep a impedance match between the teams. We actually have to bring the team size down because these low code developers or best code developers are putting out so much functionality in comparison to traditional development, which is what enterprises want. What does developer want? I want to do more good things, and that's how we see it.
And how was that? Like, did you get some resistance at the beginning, or was it smooth? Like, okay, we're gonna. Were there teams that did legacy, and you say, okay, we're transitioning into this, or you kind of build them, from scratch with that mindset?
Yeah, most of our developers that we have in the low code space were traditional developers. Not all, but many of them were. And so obviously there's little friction inside of OutSystems for being an OutSystems developer, but there is in the community in general, that friction like we talked about, mainly from the name and how it's been positioned, because it's been in opposition to it. But internally, we don't. It's something that there's obviously we take pride in. We think that it's a noble mission that we're on. I think it's something that helps. It helps companies, it helps people, but I think it helps the world in general just to close that gap between 25 million and 6 billion developers versus users, which once again, it is a good thing to do. And so we don't really have as far as friction internally. It's easy for us to articulate the benefits. Where in some organization, it may be something a little bit new and foreign, but we understand that, that disparity. And I think that, there's a line along this too, that you look at, just talk about as far as removing the complexity, all this other, but just going and being an elite DORA performer, and so the DevOps, research as far as group, in Google, and you think about those metrics that being an elite DORA performer, low code developers are elite DORA performers out of the gate. I mean, literally, you go to the 4 major measures and you take them, and you're like, as a low code developer, right away, you're elite. Where traditional development teams, it's hard. I mean, you get to that point, the ability to recover, how many times you release to production. I mean, all those different things, really, really hard. Low code, immediate. And we see our teams doing that, regularly. I want to take my craft and deliver some value in the world, and so whatever that means to you, it could be a hobby, could be that I'm paid to do it, could be whatever, but that frustration. I mean, I'm sure you've been down that path as far as in your career where you work, I mean, months, maybe quarters, sometimes years on a project, and it could literally never see the light of day. I've been there from a developer standpoint. That is absolutely the worst feeling in the world.
Yeah.
To put kind of your heart and soul in a piece of software,
Put it in the
and
drawer.
for whatever reason, it never gets released. I mean, every developer out there, that's been at this for any amount of time, I'm sure has been on one of those projects. That is absolutely the worst feeling in the world as a developer. And that is something that you basically never get, using low code tools, because you can get these applications out so fast that they have very few things that you have to worry about on that side of the complexity that will keep you, which is generally on the technology side. It's not performant, it's not reliable, all those different things. You can get applications in the hands of end users so fast with low code tools and start getting immediate feedback and do it in production, not just in a test or POC mode. And so, yeah, it's interesting. It's just the emotional testimonial of low code developers is, that's when you kind of like, okay, check, we're doing something right in the world,
One of my last questions that it's really interesting to me is how do you recommend getting started with combining legacy with this new approach of low code or no code?
Yeah, I mean, the thing is, you just have to get started, and you can do it from a let's take there's kind of 2 different vectors you'll see sometimes. You can come at it from the business, or you can come at it from an individual. I think I really prefer looking at this from the developer standpoint. I think that we're in a unique industry on the traditional development side of, once again, going back to what I mentioned about the skills and the kind of the fracturing of that into specialized skills. You're When you get to that point as a developer, you know that there are many things you can't do well. So what you and I talk about, we're back end developers. We couldn't do front end. Let's
Yeah.
just take that classic example right there. I want to go do an application. Well, I'm depending now upon, I got to have a very talented as far as group of front end developers that I partner with to do it. It's not a bad thing, but it takes time. It takes putting the team together and all that. As a developer, start that. Go find an area that you're not good at. Continue doing what you're doing today in your traditional development. Go augment that with low code. And so as a backend developer, I can go create beautiful front ends, web front ends, mobile front ends. I don't need to know, React Native, Flutter, all those different things. I can literally just go in, design what I want, take the intent of the application, still do my backend. And so my challenge, I guess, to the developer community is go find a thing that kind of you don't like, that's a pain to you, that you say I'm not good at, and go investigate low code tool. I think you'll be surprised at how you can continue doing what you do today, but now all of a sudden you've augmented, kind of like to think of it like you put your mech suit on, right? And so what I was good at as a human, now all of a sudden I've got this mech suit that gives me the ability to do all these other things really, really well,
Yeah.
And so you've all of a sudden just upskilled yourself significantly. It's just helping me do what I want to do. I mean, that's what it comes down at the end of the day. It's going to make obviously the business side happy, either IT or business unit, as far as leaders, that we're getting more for the same investment. And developers, once again, love being a developer again, which is it's a pretty awesome scenario to get to.
It's cool. It's cool. I like it. I like the like developer first approach. So he's saying, hey, maybe even before the business needs something, me as a developer, I can go in and say, okay, what are the things that I don't know how to do very well, and then use low code like to complement that. Because if I'm a great backend engineer, maybe I'll do that. So that's really cool. And also, you're saying the second option is for the business to kind of experiment with this and find like a group of 2 or 3 people that can start something. It's really interesting. Yeah, I think we're kind of out of time, but I want to say that this was a great conversation, PJ. I really enjoyed it. I think it really, and I know the audience enjoyed it. Kind of like getting ourselves like to think out of the box, remove the stigma and all the bad names. We'll come up with a best name for it. We'll convince the analysts like to adopt our name. But thank you very much. I really appreciate the time. This was a great talk.
Thanks for having me.